for those of you who are joining us from the United States, if you would like to look up into an amazing man who is still alive and still impacting great change, the namesake of our host school, Stephen Lewis. He is an amazing Canadian and someone who we are all very proud of. And so if you would like to learn about a little bit about Canada to our friends in the States, Stephen Lewis is a great person to start with. Another great person to start with is our scientist who we're meeting today, Dr. Eugenia Duodu. But we'll get to meet her in a second. So we're waiting for a couple more sites. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds to our to my tech team. If you want to let us know how we're doing and if we're ready to go, that would be great. And we're ready. All right. Oh, and looks like our friends from the Canadian Commission from UNESCO also joined us. So they're just coming online now and getting their audio activated and all that jazz. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Terry Gotthold, and I am super excited to be joining you today. And we're going to get started. Once again, we're going to, in terms of order of introductions, we're going to start with our friends in Bethlehem. Well, in Saskatchewan, but the school's name is Bethlehem Catholic. And you're going to go first for your introductions. Bethlehem, can you just give me an audio test to make sure we're good to go?
Hi.
Hello. So good. Excellent. And I know that we've already tested with our friends at Glen Rosa Middle School and also with our friends at WD Davidson. What about our friends at the Canadian Commission for UNESCO? How's that audio coming through? Bonjour Isabelle.
Bonjour, comment ça va?
Oh, ça va très bien, merci. Perfect. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. And like I said, in 30 seconds, we're missing a couple sites, but they will join us as we go. Just to confirm, our friends from Griffith Scott School in Alberta. Is Griffith Scott, are you here? No? Okay, that sounds good. And we'll get started in a second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Terry Gotthold, and I'm with the Center for Global Education, and it is a pleasure to be welcoming students who are joining us from all across Canada and even down and into the United States for today's very special video conference in which we're going to be talking about women, amazing women in STEM, and the work that they are doing, the research that they're doing, the paths that they have taken to get them there. We're super excited to have partnered with the Canadian Commission for UNESCO to host this event, and working with our host school, which is at the Stephen Lewis Secondary in the Peel School District in Mississauga, Ontario. We're going to get to meet a number of schools who are joining us here right away, but I would like to start with the fact of honoring the fact that we are coming together on each of us in different portions of land. And this land, many of these pieces of land that we are living on have been places where people have come together for not just dozens of years, not just even as old as our countries are, but they've been coming together for thousands of years. And so I think it's very appropriate, ladies and gentlemen, to honor the fact that we are continuing to meet as peoples have met on the land that we are on for thousands of years. So the land I'm joining you from is Treaty 6 territory, and it is the traditional lands of many First Nations people as well as the Métis people. And so I acknowledge the fact that their ancestors are, and the people have been working and have been meeting and have been on this land for so many thousands of years, and we continue the tradition that they have established. So our first introductions that we have, we're going to start with our friends, our schools that are joining us from all the way out in Saskatchewan. So hello to our friends in Bethlehem Catholic High School. Would you tell us who you, oh, just a second. One thing that I did invite people to do was at the very beginning, I invited you to talk about who is a female, a woman scientist who you look up to. All right, so as part of your introductions, we want you to talk about who a woman scientist is, who you look up to and has had an impact on you. So we'll go back over now to our friends in Bethlehem Catholic High School in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Bethlehem, over to you.
2, 1.
Hi.
We are from Bethlehem Catholic High School in Saskatoon, and we are all members of our school's Justice Squad. A fun fact about our school is that we are a UNESCO school, and we have students from over 45 countries. We would now like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis.
A female scientist that we really look up to is Donna Strickland, a Canadian optical physicist who recently won the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize. Oh, the physics prize for the physics prize.
Brilliant. Well, let's have a round of applause for our friends in Saskatoon. Way to go, Bethlehem. Woo! All right. Now let's go a little bit further to the east. I'm sure everybody's clapping, but their mics are muted. That's why you could only hear me. Because so it's all good. Now, to our friends in Alberta, Queen Elizabeth High School, over to you. Can you introduce yourselves? All right, to our friends at Queenie, it looks like you're there. We go. Microphone's unmuted and you are ready to go. Queenie, over to you.
Hello. Hi. So we are from Queen Elizabeth High School in Edmonton, Alberta, of Canada, and we are member of the Global Citizenship program in our school. And our school is one of the two only UNESCO school in Alberta, and we very welcoming all people from like so many different countries.
A woman that we look up to, I look up to in STEM is Rana Mandwar, and she is a civil and environmental engineer in Edmonton.
And we would like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory as well, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux.
We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Great introduction, Queen Elizabeth High School. Well done. Good job, guys. All right, let's continue. We're still waiting for our friends from Griffith Scott School in Millet, Alberta to join us. But while they come online, we'll hop across back to the west now to our friends in Glen Rosa Middle School, West Kelowna.
We would first like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Okanagan people. Glen Rosa Middle School is a diverse and inclusive learning community located in the Okanagan. A woman in science that I look up to most is Roberta Bonnard, since she is the first Canadian female astronaut and the first neurologist in space.
Very great introduction. Good job, West Kelowna. Way to go, British Columbia. Round of applause. Woo-hoo! So well done. Okay, now before we go to our host school, we are going to go to some friends who are joining us all the way from the United States. So to our friends at W.P. Davidson High School in Mobile, Alabama, would you like to introduce yourselves? Go ahead. Oh, Alabama, we cannot hear you. Okay, there we go. I think we're good now.
We're W.P. Davidson from Mobile, Alabama in the United States. We're all in the college prep EPIC program here at Davidson. And a scientist that I look up to personally, her name is Anna Patterson. She's the vice president of the engineering program at Google, and she also founded the Progressive Women of Silicon Valley over in California.
Brilliant. Welcome. It's great to have you here, Alabama. Good job, guys. Woo-hoo! Oh, now before we go to Stephen Lewis Secondary, we do have another guest who I said hello to briefly at the very beginning. But joining us from the Canadian Commission from UNESCO, do we still have Isabel? Are you still here?
Yeah.
Okay, would you like to say hello to our friends from all across Canada and even down into the United States?
Sure. Hi, my name is Isabel, and I work at the Canadian Commission for UNESCO based in Ottawa, and very happy to be here online and hear what's happening across Canada. This is a very important issue for us, is obviously promoting girls and women in science. And I'm particularly also interested to hear from Eugenia today, because it's also February is also Black History Month. So I think there's a really interesting intersectoral topic of how do we make sure that all Canadians feel included in the field of science. And excited to hear from all of you. And thanks for organizing and hosting Stephen Lewis High School, and of course the Center for Global Education.
Great, thank you. Let's give Isabella an applause as well. Yay, way to go! Woo! Okay, now last but not least, I guess we do need to acknowledge some friends who are joining us through the live stream. So schools that are joining that way, it's wonderful to have you here as well. But we will pass the microphone over now to our host school for today at Stephen Lewis Secondary School in Mississauga, Ontario. Stephen Lewis, over to you.
We'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather and that the region of Peel operates, the Treaty of the Land and the Mississaugas of the Credit. For years, Indigenous people have inhabited and cared for this land, and particularly we'd like to acknowledge the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Chippewa Ojibwe. The land that is home to that of the Métis, and more recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are so grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land here today, and by doing so, extend our respects to its first inhabitants. Now, moving forward, we have a very special guest that is here with us today. There is no description that can really do her work justice, but to just get started off, she is the CEO of the Visions for Science Network for Learning, which is a charitable organization that empowers youth from low-income communities through meaningful engagement in the science, technology, engineering, and math careers. She's a community advocate, organizer, educator, and speaker who is passionate about creating these equitable opportunities for youth all over the nation. Her STEM contribution towards underprivileged communities empowers, inspires, and elevates youth to continue their education towards a PhD level. She changes the energy often associated with poverty, frustration, and aggression, and transforms that to encourage youth to work towards their PhD. Our guest herself has a honors bachelor degree in both chemistry and biology, and has a PhD in chemistry from the University of Toronto. We are so excited to have her here today. And please give your warmest welcome to Dr. Eugenia Duodu.
I can be seen and heard by everyone. I know that I need to use this mic, so I am going to use it. We'll make sure that we're all good. There aren't any technical difficulties. This mic is on, it is not on, but that is okay. We're gonna roll with it. For those of you who don't, yeah, it's not on. Yeah, we're good?
No, we can hear you clearly. Sounds great.
Clearly, sounds great, awesome. All right, cool. I'm going to yell at you. All right, Stephen Lewis, secondary school. Congratulations on this awesome event. I am honored to be here. When I was hearing from all the schools from all over Canada and even the United States, I was like, who, me? little old me doing this, but you know what? It's fine. We just combat that imposter syndrome every time we need to. And I am so excited to be able to join you all and share a little bit about my story. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I had never met a scientist in my life. The closest thing to a scientist that I knew was Bill Nye the Science Guy, who would come on like after school, and I'd vibe with him on the television, but that was pretty much it. So what I want to do for you all and everyone who's kind of tuned in is give a little depiction of my personal journey and how I got to where I am. A lot of times we don't know how people ended up where they lives, and we're like, yeah, that's cool. They must be super smart. But it's super important to realize that the struggle is real. But it's all good, because the hope in that is that in other people's struggles, we can understand that we can too make it and do what we need to do in STEM and beyond. So what I'll talk about first is community. I never ever start a talk without talking about where I came from. In the introduction, you kind of got an idea of where I started. I grew up in a low-income community in West Toronto. What that basically means is that the majority of myself and those I grew up with lived at or just below the poverty line. Now, this really wasn't something that I noticed about my life right away. It wasn't until I kind of got a little older, started getting invited to birthday parties, started realizing that no one was trying to come to my hood for a birthday party, realized there is something different here. That being said, I had this love for my community, this love for the people that I grew up with, this love for the people around me, and I was able to really see the potential in every single person that I interacted with. Another thing that was super important about my community is that we supported one another. So throughout my whole entire journey, and maybe you'll hear about it, is that I was able to receive a whole bunch of support. So community is something that's always super important to me. Kind of growing up, I was able to navigate through my community. And one thing that happened when I was really younger is that I started to develop this love for science, a secret passion that I wasn't really trying to talk about. It was started off with kind of, the age-old shows. I mentioned one, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Magic School Bus. Watching those shows, I started to really start to imagine and think about all the awesome things that I could do. I never thought of myself as a scientist. I never necessarily saw myself as a scientist, but I knew that I loved science. And I kept kind of navigating through it and pursuing it as I went through. Approached the education system, learning about science, I kind of forgot about it. When I went to school, science was just this subject that I had to get through. It wasn't really something that I was super passionate about right away, but there was still something about it that sparked this interest in me that no other subject could. And I was starting to really question to myself, could this be something for me? And every single time I'd wrestle with that question, I'd get some interesting answers. I remember I really, really wanted to do something in science, and I had approached one of my teachers, kind of talking to them about it. I got an interesting response. Science? That'll be way too hard for you. You should probably stick to something much more easier. And that kind of stuck with me because I was like, yeah. Sorry that I even tried to ask that question. Sorry that I even hazarded a dream that this could be something that I could be a part of. It was disheartening, but I took that on. And science was relegated to my closeted passion, nothing more than that. And it was always going to stay there without kind of reemerging. I don't know if are we doing slides? Nope, that's cool. We roll with it. So one thing that did happen, sorry, we're at slide number 6. Sorry, slide number 6, thank you. One thing that did happen when I was navigating through high school is that I had the awesome opportunity to encounter one of my teachers. A science teacher, my grade 9 science teacher was also a physics teacher. And we vibed, we were cool, He knew that I was kind of on the fence about science, but he recognized that I had an aptitude for it. So he kind of tapped me, tapped another teacher, and I think the two of them conspired, and they opportunity for me to be part of the school's microbiology program. And so I got offered that. Basically, the biology teacher at the school at the time approached me and says, you know what? I think you'll be great for this program. You are so bright. I was really hesitant because grade 9, I don't know about y'all, but I was trying to keep up with appearances. And I wasn't really trying to be rocking a lab coat in the hallways. So as I was navigating through this, I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if I want other people and some of my peers to really know that this is the path that I want to be a part of, because this wasn't something that my peers were into either. It was something that was really for me. So it's okay. I went to my microbiology class, I navigated through that, and I ended up graduating at the very top of my class in that grade. And it was awesome because it exposed something about science that I had never seen before. For the first time in high school, I was able to do science in a hands-on way in a lab environment, and that experience transformed the way that I saw science and the way that I saw myself in it. And I, in fact, saw myself in it because I looked damn good in a lab coat. So it wasn't even a problem. As I navigated through that, I still had to deal with, you can go to the next slide. I still had to deal with more obstacles. I remember deciding to myself, you know what? I'm going to go into science. This is something that I'm going to do. It's all 3 science. Bada bing, bada boom, sign me up. So I go to the guidance counselor and I'm like, listen, couple of changes. Please sign me up for physics, biology, and chemistry, please, because that is what I need. And I recognize that those are the prerequisites if I want to continue on this path. And I killed it in microbiology last year, so let's do it. And I was met with another statement that was really hard for me to take. That's going to be way too hard for you. Students who take all 3 sciences, it's a heavy course load. I was confused because I was doing so well in science up to that point. So the conversation didn't make any sense to me. We kind of went back and forth, and I kind of gave up and left that whole situation alone. I went home to my mom, and I said, you know what, looks like I'm not getting into science, so we're just gonna let that to rest. And I don't know how many of you here have ever encountered or have a West African mother, but she was not about it. She was like, who told you that? Too hard? Too hard? What do you mean too hard? There is nothing that you cannot do. So make sure you go back and you let them know you need to be enrolled in these science courses. So went back with my mom, and I was able to be enrolled and continued on. From there, I had the awesome opportunity to not only engage in science, but also to engage in a rich opportunity at the University of Toronto. See, they had a program for grade 11 and 12 called the Summer Mentorship Program, where you're able to work on site with doctors and researchers for your whole summer and live as a university student. So I got the opportunity for that through a student teacher who happened to see me sitting in the hallway reading a science textbook. And that serendipitous opportunity opened up so many doors for me. That was the first opening that I had into research. I remember just walking past the research lab and I was like, that's something that I'm into. That looks super dope. And I want to be a part of it. How do I sign up? Sign me up. After that summer, everything changed. I was able and I had the confidence and the grades and the aptitude to be able to apply to a bunch of universities across Canada, and I got into U of T. And so, as you've heard, I did my double major in chemistry and biology at the University of Toronto. We're just on the next slide, sorry. And that path led me to be able to eventually do my PhD in chemistry. Every time I talk about my PhD in chemistry, a lot of folks don't know that that journey in itself was a struggle. When I was an undergrad, I was met with numerous obstacles. If y'all thought high school was a problem, undergrad posed a whole bunch of other problems. But thankfully, going back to my community of support, I was grounded. I had people who were rooting for me on the sidelines. I had kids coming up to me saying, I never met anyone who's been in university before, so keep going. We need you. And although there was a lot of pressure, it also put a lot of fire under me to make sure that I kept trying in the midst of the obstacles that were constantly coming at me and in the midst of the naysayers that were saying, you cannot do this. Was able to pursue and complete my PhD. We can talk about some of the research in the Q&A, but I had the awesome opportunity to work in a cancer lab. And what that enabled me to do was help develop diagnostics and therapeutics to target and detect and destroy cancer. Honestly, it was incredible to be able to go into work every day. All the work that I was doing was contributing to something a lot bigger than myself. One thing, though, that I recognized and couldn't ever shake was that although I had made it so far and I was able to present at international conferences and do all of these things, I recognized the community that I came from and the disparity and the barriers that were still there. See, what a lot of people don't realize is scientists care about a lot of things. And that's partially why we go into science, because we care about making the world a better place. And for me, from the social justice angle, I felt really, really troubled with the fact that there were youth in my community that still didn't know that they could do this. That there were a lot of people that I grew up with that were facing the same barriers that I encountered, how to navigate past them. So I decided to make sure that I got involved with some sort of organization or something that can help mitigate those barriers. And that goes to my work with Visions of Science. In 2015, just as I defended my PhD, I was able to assume the role as CEO and develop and grow that organization. We started off with 6 communities. We're now in about 30 across the Greater Toronto area. We serve about 1,500 youth per year. And we have about 36 staff and 102 volunteers that we work with. It has grown a lot. And being able to run an organization, being able to really impact youth through STEM is a dream come true. And it's a really interesting intersection of my passions for community and for science and scientific research. Sorry, the next slide. So the next 2 slides, actually. We can go to slide 12. As I think about my journey, what made ways and mitigated and helped me overcome the roadblocks, all I want to do is share some things that were critical in me being able to overcome and navigate those things. So we're just going to go to the next slide after. Thank you. The first one, and it seems a little fluffy, was care. You have to care about something. A lot of times when people are going into science or going into STEM, we want to do of things and we want to solve a bunch of different problems. And the awesome thing about STEM is that the opportunities are limitless. But you need to kind of figure out, what is it that I care about? What problem in the world do I feel like I can contribute to? Or what problem in the world do I don't think that I can contribute to? If you had asked me when I was in high school if I would be the CEO of a charitable organization that is serving to help the very community that I was always like, what? I would laugh and say, nah, I don't have the qualifications, I don't have the time, and I don't have a PhD, so I'm not going to do all of that. But here I am. So there is a really important purpose in caring deeply and being rooted in your passion. Scientists are passionate people. They're passionate about their research and they're passionate about what they do. So while you're kind of figuring out what it is that you want to do, what do you care about? What are you passionate about? What moves you? Figure that out. The next one is challenging your growth. I have never been challenged more than I have during my PhD. And probably from the very first day of my research journey, I failed. Experiments don't work almost every day. Things happen that cause you to believe I cannot do this. But every single day there was an opportunity for me to challenge my growth, to learn something new, and not let the "it's too hard" be a barrier. As you've heard in my story, every single door that I had to stem was met with a potential roadblock where people were saying it's too hard for you. So I had to one day just come to myself and say, actually, I've made it this far, so I'm gonna try. Challenge your growth and understand that STEM will always give you opportunities to push yourself. Continue to push yourself, continue to push that envelope. Look at things that are going on, look at your experiments, look at the things that you are wondering about, the things you're passionate about, and continue to challenge your growth. The next piece of advice, and the next slide, is support. Scientists work together. I worked in an incredibly collaborative lab. I worked with people from different universities. We worked with different hospitals. Everything was about support and collaboration. I would encourage you to practice that now. You have an army of people that are around you, community, whatever that looks like for you. Tap into that support. I know for myself, as I was navigating through all of the different barriers and being a scientist and all of the naysayers telling me that I did not have what it took, I had a support system that was right there to be like, nah, you absolutely do. Keep going. We all need that. And we'd be lying to ourselves if we said we didn't. So understand identifying your support from now. Y'all are in high school, and some who are listening are in high school, and it's hard to know who your friends are going to be for life. My best friend from high school is still my best friend right now. And we made a decision in high school that we were going to aim high, we were going to challenge our growth, and we were going to care for and support one another. Now she's a nurse practitioner working in a rural area, helping other communities, and I'm doing what I'm doing. But we still support each other every single day. Scientists do this in work and beyond. And I would encourage you to make sure that you're starting that from now. And the next thing, and this is the next slide, is share power. A lot of times, what a lot of people don't understand is that I was in a highly privileged position. I had access to research that had not been disclosed yet, access to patents that had not been disclosed yet, access to so many different areas of research. And I felt a very deep sense of responsibility, not only to ensure that I was doing my research properly, but I was also sharing power, that I was also giving others a voice, whether it be my junior colleagues or those around me, that I was not being a silo, that I was not being an island, that I was not hoarding research. And any good scientist would know that as you have power with great power comes great responsibility. So ensure that you share your power. Understand that each and every single one of you has some sort of measure of that, and making sure that you are looking around and uplifting others as you may or may not be pursuing science. And I think a lot of these things go beyond STEM. And then the last thing is explore your possibilities. I mentioned 2 programs, a summer mentorship program and a microbiology program that I took. And a lot of times we kind of go through school, we go through life, and we kind of breeze by and don't realize that we're actually connected to a network of opportunities around us. I could tell you right now that the first thing that I said when I was presented that summer mentorship program opportunity from U of T was, who else is going? Can my friends come? Is somebody else going to be there? To think that I almost passed up an awesome opportunity at a university because I was concerned about who else was going to be there and what other people were going to be engaged with. Because my best friend ended up doing it with me, so we know that. But it was so interesting that once I entered that possibility, I got connected to another network. I got connected to other researchers that when I actually ended up going back to U of T, I was able to reconnect with. You all kind of have some sort of a network right now. It might not feel like it's the most robust, but each and every single person you know is probably connected to somebody who can connect you to something else. Make sure that if the possibilities aren't completely apparent to you, that you seek them. I know that for some of these opportunities that I had, they came and just came on my lap. I was able to reap the benefits of that. But in other times, you actually have to look. Thankfully, y'all are living in the age of Google, living in the age of social media. You can easily have access to all the awesome opportunities that are out there. Ensure that you take advantage of every single opportunity that you have. I don't need the slides anymore, so I'll just end here. What I really want to say is when we talk about women in STEM, when we talk about even encouraging others in STEM, know that it's hard to understand what each and every single person's journey was. Hopefully, I've explained to you that my journey was not easy. I was met with many, many roadblocks, many options for failure. In fact, when I went back to my high school after receiving my PhD, I was looking for that guidance counselor, like, where you at? Because, and it wasn't out of spite, we're cool now, but it was just a know what somebody's going to be able to do. So it's super important that students know the power of our potential and that we know that we can. If there's something that we want to do, we can. I want to speak to the women in the room and the women that are listening, that there will be a lot of naysayers in your life, whatever that looks like. Ensure that you know who you are, what it is you're passionate about, and what it is that you want to do. So that every now and then, you will have to say, actually, excuse me, I am going to. And I will succeed. And it's going to be amazing. Not to the men in the room as well. We all deal with different barriers and varying degrees of it. Ensure that we're not only using our power to uplift others, but we're also using it to ensure that we're being ourselves. So what I will say is, as I navigated through my journey to being a scientist, navigating the roadblocks and pathways, I can honestly say that in this position, I am so incredibly excited to be able to see the next generation of scientists and what they will. And what makes me even more excited is that now we're kind of starting to see less and less people, those who want to go into STEM, and more people can say yes and explore what the possibilities are. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I look forward to your questions, and thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Eugenia. So this is Terry over here again in St. Albert over in Alberta. We're gonna open it now for some questions, and we'll go across the country, and we'll start with our friends. Let's see, the first school to introduce themselves today is the order that we'll go. So we'll go back to our friends in Bethlehem, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Do you have a question for Dr. Eugenia?
Ask it. You can ask. I don't know how. Like you said, going into university and stuff was way harder. How did you manage to deal with the stress that came with that? You mentioned community, but was there other ways that you found helped a lot?
Absolutely, and I'm happy to answer that. And one thing that I started to do in high school was get for university. One thing that helped a lot was doing the summer mentorship program, spending a summer on campus and actually seeing how big it was, how serious it was, how complicated some of the systems could be. I was like, oh, let me make sure I actually study. So one thing that I started to do was start to develop independent learning habits. I started to really try to figure out, if I don't understand something, what am I going to do? Am I just going to sit here and say it comes, or am I going to approach my teachers and actually ask questions? So I really started to what independent learning was all about, what that had to do with me. I also created, when I say my community, I had a study group that I found very quickly. I had friends who went to Ryerson, friends who went to York, and every Saturday we wanted to chill, wanted to kick it. So every Saturday for the whole day, we met up at one of our libraries, we studied together, we brought food for each other, and we went out for dinner in the evening if we had money. If we didn't, we went home. And that's what it was. One thing that really helped me overcome some of the difficulties of university was making sure and was ready for the rigor of having to study on my own, independent learner. I also asked my professors a lot of questions, a lot. I wasn't afraid. Profs have office hours and they invite students to them, and you have like 1,000 students in your class and 3 show up to office hours. Let me tell you, I was always one of those 3. I was like, hey, let's do this. It definitely made a huge difference in that learning curve for me. I hope that answers your question.
Great question, Saskatchewan. Let's go across now to our friends in Kelowna, in British Columbia. Kelowna, do you have a question for Dr. Eugenia?
Okay, so as a student, what kind of self-care strategies did you employ when managing stress and anxiety?
Self-care, a big one. And I am still navigating through self-care. Didn't do that so well during the PhD, but tried to do it during the undergrad. For me, it was always making sure that I had at least one day where I was resting and not doing anything. So I had my work so that I had that chill out, regroup, and reset for the next week. I was work every single day all week, and if I didn't plan my life properly, I was like, too bad, because I needed that one day where I rested. I made sure that I had some by myself a lot to just think. I do a lot of reflection. I do something for me, and I also made sure that I made time for my friends and made time for the things that I loved and scheduled that. So for me, I don't think self-care just happens. Like, hopefully I'll be able to, I know there's something, you make an appointment and you go. So for me, self-care, I scheduled it. I said, you know what, for these 3 hours, I'm taking care of myself and I'm going to plan my life so that I do not interrupt this time. So that's what I still do.
Brilliant. Thank you for that great advice. Let's go now to our friends down in the United States, followed by Stephen Lewis. So first to our friends in Alabama. Do you have a question for Dr. Eugenia? Oh, you have to unmute your microphone first. Okay, one more time. Go ahead.
Oh gosh, right.
Okay. What's your favorite thing that you've accomplished and why? Can you hear me?
Yep, we heard you.
Favorite thing that I've accomplished in life? I would say the PhD. Probably, yeah. I remember defending, and I remember, any of you know what a defense is like, but essentially imagine, this is not to say you can absolutely do this. I did it, and y'all see how I am. Like, you can do it. It's going into a room, and you have who have written the textbooks on everything that you for a couple of years, for 3 hours, and you have to just not die. So there's more to that. You have to defend your work. You have to defend the research that you have invested in for years. So for me, that defense and overcoming that, I remember being so nervous. I'm like, yo, if I walk out of here alive, I don't know. No, it's a party every single day. And so I walked out of there alive. I walked out there like, congratulations, Dr. Drodu. I'm like, what? Say it again. So it was a lot, but that was probably one of the pivotal moments in my.
Great. Thank you so very much. Great question, friends in Alabama. Let's come on back now to our host school, Stephen Lewis. Do you have a question for Dr. Eugenia?
How do you manage being a woman in the field of science? And kind of dealing with way people undermine your ability as being a woman. So
So, the question was, how do I deal with being a woman in science, and how do I deal with people undermining my ability? So, you know what? Unfortunately, I got lots of training in that with my PhD from my first year to everything else. It was a lot. One thing that y'all might not have noticed about me is not only am I a woman, I'm a Black woman. You feel me? You may not have noticed, but I am. So that creates another intersection of things that I cannot even explain. At the university, I was the only Black person doing the PhD program in chemistry at the time. So there was just a lot. For me, it was always about re-educating people when I felt like something was off or I was being undermined. So I called it out very gently every time. So I always said, you know what? I don't know what that was. Not too sure what that comment was, but I definitely am qualified to be doing this. Peep the paper that I wrote, and let's just have a real conversation about the science. And that's what it was for me. Always redirecting it. Let's have a conversation about the science. And if there was a teachable moment, I made sure that I took the time to be able to educate people. A lot of times it was just a matter of letting people know, yes, I am the scientist, not the janitor, which happened a lot. So it was a lot, but it's definitely made me more resilient and helped me to really understand some of the barriers that people go through on a daily basis and be empathetic to that. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Great question. Thank you so much, Doctor. Let's go back now to our friends in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan, do you have another question for Dr. Eugenia? There we go. It's coming across back to you. We can see you. And if you're ready for your question, you go right ahead.
Does anyone have a question? I don't think. Please, thank you for answering all our questions.
No problem.
Absolutely. Okay, back to our friends in, actually, while West Kelowna gets ready, I have a question for you, Dr. Eugenia. Lots of times, I'm a former high school teacher. We put a lot of pressures on students to decide what they want to do with the rest of their life. When you were in high school, did you know what you wanted to do for the rest of your life? And do you have any advice for students who are feeling kind of super stressed because they have to figure everything out and they're only 17?
This is my favorite question. Fun fact. I didn't know what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, ever. Like right up until even before I was doing my PhD, I still did not know what I wanted to do. For me, I didn't think of it as the rest of my life. I thought a bit, what do I want to do right now? What am I interested in? And how can I position myself best such that whatever I want to do in the future, I don't have many doors that can be closed on me. So for me, it was really hard to navigate having to give people an answer. I never lied. I was confident in saying, I don't know, but it's going to be good. That was my answer. I don't right now, but it's going to be good. Trust me. And what's interesting about it, and one thing that I will say is, in my role as CEO of Visions of Science, that wasn't a real job yet. It's not something that I could have addressed in university because it did not exist. And one thing that's really awesome about STEM is that there are so many careers that are still being developed, that are still coming to fruition. This rise of tech has infused a whole bunch of careers that weren't even available when I was in high school. So I don't think that I don't know is a bad answer anymore. I don't know, but it's going to be good is a bad answer anymore, as long as you're positioning yourself in such a way that you have the most possibilities for yourself. And that there are the fewest doors that can be closed for you. So once I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, the possibilities were endless. And I was able to go into it, but I was not bogged down by the pressure of having to give folks an answer right away. And when my career did come to me and it did kind of come to fruition, it was awesome to be able to confidently step into it and even define it. So.
Brilliant. Thank you so very much, Doctor. Let's go across now to our friends in British Columbia. Beautiful British Columbia. Do you have another question for Dr. Eugenia?
What are some of your organizational strategies?
Oh, awesome. Okay. Some of our organizational strategies. So one thing that we do as an organization is long-term engagement. I know some of you might have engaged in some sort of a STEM program before, and it's kind of like a quick one-day workshop and you go home. Ours is always long term. It's at least 6 to 8 weeks long, and we make sure that we stay in communities as long as we can. So many of our communities, we've been there for about 6 to 8 years. So there's definitely like a longevity in what we do. There's also another huge strategy is just making sure that we are engaging youth in a meaningful way. So it's not just, flash bang, flash in the pot, that we're actually developing critical thinkers who can think independently, who can think about the world around them and be able to apply their knowledge to solve real world solutions. So those are the two educational strategies. We could go on and on, but those are some in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Great question, West Kelowna. Let's go across now to our friends in Alabama. Alabama, over to you.
So, as a woman, what was the hardest challenge you overcame in the workplace?
As a woman, what's the hardest challenge I overcame in the workplace? It's probably just being taken seriously. A lot of times, it's hard to convince people that you are in your role and you're qualified. Again, I battle with different intersectionalities of being a woman. I look quite young, hopefully. But I look quite young, so then a lot of people are like, you little old you doing this? That's so cute. And so it makes it very hard to be taken seriously in some places, and I think that's been the hardest struggle. But honestly, after 5 minutes, people take me seriously, so it's all good.
Great. Thank you so very much, Doctor. And great question of friends joining us from Alabama. Now let's go to our host site. Stephen Lewis, do you have a question for Dr. Eugenia?
Sorry, go ahead. I don't have. Just yell it and I'll repeat it.
So my question is, if there's one thing you would have done differently in your undergrad and PhD career, what would that be?
If there's one thing I would have done differently in my undergrad and PhD career, what would that be? I kind of fell into chemistry, focused on that. My specialty in undergrad was organic chemistry, so just remember me when you go to university, organic chemistry, and then did medicinal chemistry during my PhD. One thing that I know now through Visions of Science actually is how awesome engineering is. And it also really fulfills this interesting another side of me in terms of what I'm interested in. So if I could do it all again, I would have tried engineering because physics was actually my favorite subject. I just didn't think I could do it. So yeah.
Great. Doctor, we have a question from Alberta who's having some technical challenges. Their question is, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, I think that it would have been just, yes, you can. So much of what I faced and what I dealt with was contrary to my ability or what I thought my ability was, and I struggled. I really, really struggled with that. For those of you who have never encountered that, it's really hard to appreciate how hard it was to just keep going through feeling like and hearing that you can't do it. So I would have just been like, yes, you can, and everything's going to be okay, so that she could just keep going in peace. But I also probably would have said, it's okay to not know what you want to do. I can say that confidently now because of where I'm at. I was terrified in high school. I was terrified. I always felt like I had to lie and be like, yeah, a doctor, what that person said. So it was really hard to kind of navigate through that. But now I definitely know more. And that's what I would have told younger Eugenia.
Well, Dr. Eugenia, we have come to the end of our time together. Thank you so very much for sharing your words of wisdom, for the passion you have for the subject, for the difference you're making. We have young people who've been touched and been inspired by your words from all across North America. Friends, let's have a huge round of applause for Dr. Eugenia and the women in science and the amazing work that can be done. Woohoo!
Thank you. Awesome.
And without And without any further ado, I want to say a huge thanks to the Canadian Commission for UNESCO and their sponsoring of today's event and making it possible, to the Stephen Lewis Secondary School in the Peel School District in Mississauga. Thank you for hosting. To Dr. Eugenia, thank you for your amazing words. And we're looking forward to connecting you all as we continue on this journey that we're on. Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.